Welcome to Area Control Bros, where we talk about area control games mostly.
Mostly.
This week, after a week long hiatus during which we were doing a lot of epic gaming, of course, we will be talking about the age old question of Eclipse and TI4. And
Yes.
as many in the board game community are aware, these two games have their very staunch supporters and their very big communities, and we thought it would be best if we discussed them both in the same episode. However, um,
Yes.
we would
The
like.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Eclipse NTI, the classic apples to oranges comparison. you know?
Yes.
It's more like apples to pineapples, even, because it's like they both have apple in the name. Just like these two games both have space in the theme, but beyond that, they're an entirely different thing.
Yeah, very different experiences. I think in that scenario, in this metaphor, the pineapple is definitely TI4.
That is true. Yeah, that is very true.
You
I
care
think
care to explain that one? I don't see how
we
that
can
is.
get that out of the way. TI4
Yeah.
is the pineapple.
It's
Yeah.
a lot bigger, like that's like one of the main things. And also I like pineapples more than I like apples. So
Well,
Oh.
pineapples, you can fit a lot of apples in a container, but how many pineapples can you fit into a container? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Here
you
here's
can.
what I've got to say. I feel like the metaphor breaks down as soon as you realize, like, man, I'll take an apple and a pineapple, Like,
Right.
I'll have a little bit of both. Hell, mix them up in a bowl for me. Put some grapes in there. Call it a fruit salad. I don't know. Like, I'll take it
Well, but
all.
see, the fruit salad was fractal.
Mm.
Yes, yes.
But yeah,
Okay.
anyways, like we don't I think we're in agreement that these two games are not that similar. They get compared a lot, but they have very different DNA. They are not like very similar at all. like
Yeah.
I think a lot of people also say like, oh, like, do you want to play TI4, but you don't have a group of, 5 or 6 people that are willing to dedicate 8 hours to playing TI4 properly? Then play like Eclipse for the TI4 experience. But like, it's not even remotely the TI4 experience, not even in a short way. And like in the same vein, like if somebody were like, oh, you want to play like a longer more thinky version of Eclipse, then play TI4. It's like nobody would say that. And like I think it goes both ways in the sense that like I don't think one is the short version of the other, just as I don't think one is the long version of the other. They're just two different games that have hexes that are in space.
Yeah.
And I don't get why they're compared. And so
Yeah,
even
and
though it's
even the idea
yeah,
of
go
them
ahead.
being like space 4X games, all four of the X's are being executed in a very different way in the actual design. They feel
That is
very, very
definitely
different.
true.
You know, I yeah, it's very
yeah.
strange that they get compared. And I let's not be unfair. The comparison has some merit on the surface. You look and you say, well, they're the same size box. It's this big old thing, and you
Yeah.
look at it and
True.
all the tiles are space tiles, and you've got your little ships and you're, moving around, and it's all surface level.
It
Yeah.
is it's a specious comparison. But
Yeah.
I think but I do think there are points of comparison for both games that aren't each other. And I
Hmm.
guess we'll talk about that more when we dive into the discussion of each game, which that we can probably start if you guys are okay
Yeah.
with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say is the other thing is the investment of money.
True.
I was talking to you guys about this. It's like both of these games are like in the $100 to $200 range. If you're like, I think TI might actually come out a little bit cheaper than Eclipse, but then you factor in like you gotta print some codex stuff, and like there's also like Prophecy of Kings, which most people play with nowadays, which is like another bit of money you tack on there.
I do think in terms of available, again, I mean, the point isn't to compare these two games directly, but the availability of TI is better. It's on sale more. There aren't really issues with finding a copy of TI4 or Prophecy of Kings at a decent price normally. Eclipse does have availability issues sometimes. There are going to be times of the year where you can't find it, but relatively minor. I think most people that want the game will be able to acquire it. Anyway, so starting with Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy. It's an 8.5 on the Geek, weight 3.65, and it's rated 18 overall in all the
Really?
board games on Earth. It's 18
Really?
overall.
I had
Yes,
no idea.
that is well, without showing my hand too much, it's a little bit shocking. But it's 13 in strategy. Interesting, huh?
That is
Yeah.
interesting. And yeah, and then you've got Eclipse New Dawn for the Galaxy, which is what Second Dawn for the
It's the
Galaxy
original.
is
This is
re-implementing.
essentially the second printing, the second
Yeah.
edition, just as
Yeah.
TI4 is the fourth edition of.
And so that version is rank 82 overall. So it's got 2 in the top 100. Very interesting.
So obviously, this game has a big fan base. I don't think there's a game in the top 100 that doesn't have a fan base, or it just wouldn't have the sheer volume of ratings to get there. It's got 14K ratings, which is a lot. We talked about Inish last episode has 20K ratings, which we said is that's a lot of ratings for a game that's at mass market retail. And this game is harder to acquire. If a retailer does have a copy, they might have like one copy per month, and so there being 14K ratings for this game shows that it's, despite its availability issues, a lot of people have it and enjoy it and are willing to rate it highly.
Yeah. I mean, I can start in with some of the positives. We try to start with some of those.
No, I
Um,
was just hinting.
yeah. I can start. It is a good looking game. Like the game that I have no qualms with the like art or the like tiles. Like the tactility of it feels good. Everything is like well organized. It's a very well like put together box. The game is balanced, like I feel like the scores are pretty like where like everybody's kind of competing, like I think the last game we had everybody was within like 2 points, you
Yep.
know. Like it works. It's like the exploration is fun somewhat. Like you get to kind of see these tiles. Like it's got an interesting mechanic where you can like explore backwards toward yourself and like expand the universe, which is kind of cool. And you know like the shipbuilding is pretty neat on the like when you first see it you're like I can go and like put together these like little ships and like they'll do things that are a little bit different than what other people's like are. You get to explore some tiles, fight some npcs, and get some like you can potentially get like a special ship part that only you have access to and you can put that into your designs. That's all like the things that I was excited about and were looking forward to when we like opened up the box and we had all this tech and the tech tree was pretty cool. I think like our first play, we were all like, yeah, that's you know, it's pretty cool. Like there's got some of that stuff going for it. Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah,
agree that the production of the game is excellent. I think that
yeah,
goes without saying almost.
100%. Yeah, the production's really really good. The little chits for the ship parts are nice, and um, the player boards are really nice. The player trays are extremely nice. I'd be hard pressed if you asked me to come up with 5 games that are better produced than this. I don't know if I could. Like it's that good. The box organization is awesome. It all fits together really really well. You feel like it's like Christmas when you're opening up this box. It's like every little thing you see, you're like, oh my god, like they put so much love into this. And I would agree that the game feels relatively balanced. The factions feel relatively balanced and are interesting, I think, across. Um, it's possible that if we were to play this more, maybe we would decide that one or the other faction is a little bit stronger. Ben and I played a two-person game, and in that particular play, it felt like the Mechama faction was quite good, but at the same time, I could really see that being more circumstantial the way that game played out with some really early accelerated sort of, what would you call that, like engine building that Ben had going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, hard to argue with the production on this one for sure.
Yeah. It's like it's a finished product, like for sure. It's polished, like it's a well-made game. Um, like the systems that they have set out work together well, like they
Yes.
and like the game, it was pretty easy to pick up. Like there wasn't anything that was like super confusing. Like like
I
you
would
you
add
pick
to
it up.
that point though of make
Yeah.
sure you have a printout of all of the techs and different ship part upgrades. I think that was really helpful that we did
Yeah,
that and
Blake
had a little
printed out
printout.
the help sheet for tech, so you can just look at it at a glance. That is extremely helpful for
Yeah, I
sure.
feel like we might have been a little bit lost without that. What do you think, Ben?
I think we would have been passing the rules book around a lot. I don't know if they
Yeah,
have like a section that has what all of them do or
See,
not,
they
but
do. Yeah,
Kemet preempted this issue by giving everyone the magazines to peruse.
right.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's got a similar thing to Commit where it's got like a somewhat limited tech market. And like it's like an interesting like it's got some interesting ideas, like the shipbuilding, the tech market, like the exploration, like all of them are like, you know, done well and they work well together. And like I like finding these secret hidden techs. I like I like some of that stuff to spice it up. Um, but I mean, we can start like getting into some of what I don't like. If
Yeah,
anybody
I was waiting for the
has,
but.
but I I have found that in play of this game, I it feels like it just feels bad. I don't know. Like there's really not like
There it is. He said it.
a
he
lot
said
of the
it.
systems just feel not fun to me. And
Yeah,
maybe like if you're like a big Euro gamer and you're really like I like making my engine work, but I don't know, like it just like none of it feels good to play. Like you just like have this economy that you're running and you're just constantly worried about spending too much money. And then like even the like ship building, like it feels like all of the ships end up feeling somewhat the same, even though you're supposed to be kind of like going asymmetrical and building like different ships. Like it feels like the game has somewhat played the same the like the three times that we played it. It just feels like I can't do anything. And it feels like as the game progresses, I want to be able to do more. But the way that the game works with the little things that you pull off is just like it costs exponentially more to do things and you earn exponential more income, so it ends up averaging out to just be linear, like it ends up being like I can do the same amount of stuff turn one as I can do on like turn 10, like there's or turn it doesn't even go to turn 10 but like
Turn 8
turn
or
8.
round 8, I guess.
Yeah, like there's gonna be some rounds where you can like do more, but it's like by the mid game there was like this last game we played. I was able to do like two things before I looked at my board and said, "I'm going to financially ruin myself. I'm never going to recover if I do another thing."
Well,
Um,
I think we should hone in on exactly why that kind of thing can happen as well, because there's a so this game is essentially an engine builder. I almost don't even think of it as like a 4X game. It's kind of like wearing that as a coat, but it's fundamentally an engine builder, and the 4X is almost like window dressing. But I think one thing that happens with engine builders is There's usually a lot of freedom in how you develop your engine, or you're able to sort of sort through a group of cards. You look through like an all-time classic engine building game, Race for the Galaxy, still probably my favorite engine builder ever. You go through a ton of cards in that game when you're developing your engine, and you're able to sort of pick and choose what you want and create your strategy based on that as you sort of draw through this huge shared deck. However, in Eclipse, you're not in a huge amount of control of what direction you must go in because of the way that the explore action works. And I think fundamentally the explore action is kind of fighting with this game wanting to be more Euro-ish. And it makes me think like it makes it feel a little wacky that there's that much randomness. Like
Hmm.
maybe you do want to have an economy that's able to take more actions, but you want to have less production and less science. Well, it just turns out that the exploration tiles that are in your vicinity don't have any money. And yes, you can discard those tiles, but you can't replace them unless you're playing the Scions of Draco with a different tile. And there are going to be times where maybe you look at both tiles with that faction and neither has money, and so you're going to be in situations where discarding the tile means you spent the action to explore and got nothing for it, which still equates to having spent money and run your economy harder to perform the action. And so it's
Yeah.
not like you're exploring for free. And so it makes you feel more inclined to just be like, well, I guess I'll just take this tile and work with it, because otherwise I'm going to be losing money by trying to explore and get something better, and I might not even get something better. Um, I feel like that is frankly a huge design flaw in this game. I think it's like you look at games that are Euro space themed, like Gaia Project is a popular game. I played Gaia Project several times, and so I think about that sometimes when I play this game, and I think like, like if somebody wanted to play like a Euro space game, why not just play like Gaia Project? Because you have this uh, board that's not going to be as random. There's going to be some sort of elements that are random, and you have to deal with players blocking you and building satellites in that game. But even so, ironically, that game, despite having zero combat, is there's more player interaction because of the way you can block people. But
Hmm.
it's less random because of the explore element not being so random
Yeah.
inherently. And I can't think of another game where the exploration is that random period. And then on top of the like what resources are on the tile, you have this system of wormholes, kind of like warp tunnels. I forget what the official term is. And it kind of innately disincentivizes player interaction because it makes you think like, well, I want to link this tile to my own stuff, of course, so that I can get around. But then just by doing that, in a lot of situations, you end up blocking access to that tile for your neighbors. And then you find yourself being pulled into the thought, well, like, well, maybe that's not so bad. They can't come get me. But then it's like, from a game design perspective, I want them to be able to threaten. Uh, I want there to be the threat of other people coming to do
Yeah.
stuff to me. you know?
And I think important to mention there, because the game does actually have like genuine wormhole tiles that you
Yes,
could
it
throw
does.
in and connect the board more. What you're talking about, Will, is that each of the different hexes only has so many of its different sides that are able to connect to adjacent hexes, and it will
Yep.
only then connect if the adjacent hexes also have one of their sides that can connect facing that same way. So you have to make a two-way connection, and so in the times that we've played, it's ended up feeling like, yeah, as you mentioned, I almost feel disincentivized to connect up the board. And even when you want to connect up the board, sometimes you just can't.
And
Which again,
and the tech that lets you pass through half a connection might not even show up. It
right?
showed up on like round 8 of our last game, and so we were just nobody could
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
around
So I want to I
without
want
it.
to add to that about some of these random elements, because you've mentioned about the explore action, and I think that I would agree that that is probably the most glaring issue of RNG in this game, where You have an optimization puzzle, and you're having to plan for like unlimited contingencies, which is just impossible, right? And so the optimization puzzle goes out the window. Even if that's saying that I think people, I think a lot of people find optimization puzzles interesting. I find them interesting sometimes. It's not really my thing, but in this game, you have an optimization puzzle that you can't like plan for. You do your explore action, you see the tile, you're throwing away money, as Will said, if you choose not to put that tile down, and so you feel like you have to. Okay, well there goes a decision out the window. And then once that comes out, you have an additional element of randomness because most of those exploration tiles have a space for a little reward chit to come down that you can get if there's any of the NPC. I think they call them ancients, and
The ancients, yeah.
yeah, if those are on the tile, you can't claim your little reward chit right away. Some of the tiles don't have reward chits, but I would say most of them do. And you get these little reward chits, and some of them are these cool ship parts that are unique that Ben was mentioning. And I think that's the most fascinating part of the game is when you get like a really unique, cool ship part. And those are few and far between, firstly. They're also, in my estimation, more powerful than almost anything else you can get. And sometimes you just don't get a single one the whole game, right? There are some of these chits that will give you 8 money, and maybe you really need 8 money at that time, or maybe you really don't. It's just all sorts of randomness on that, on top of the already really random explore action. And then you also have a lot of randomness in what technologies come out. You could be building towards a really cool set of ships. Maybe you're playing a faction that gives you extra energy on your ships, and so you're trying to build around that idea and get some high impact but low energy consumption ship parts, and you might just not see them. You really just might not see them, be it because you don't get them from the little chits that go down on top of the explore tiles, or because you don't see the special text that would unlock those ship parts. You genuinely could go the whole game without seeing it, and you might have been planning from turn one that that's going to be your strategy because your faction pushes you towards it. And so, yeah, in my opinion, to give someone an optimization puzzle that then plays out with like so little control over the actual engine that you're trying to put together, it's crazy, and the end result is like, I feel like you play this game and you have all this excitement over the developing like powers that be on the board, right? You're developing your own power, and you're also sitting there, you're watching your opponents and like, oh my god, he's got these crazy ships. He just absolutely smoked that NPC faction. I need to build up more, right? You haven't even fought them. It's turn, 4 at this point. You haven't fought your neighbor, but it's like, wow, he's really doing something crazy. I need to do more. And then you have these stressful turns where you're trying to figure out exactly how many actions you can do without completely busting your economy. And it's numbers. And at the end of the day, by the time you're caught up to where you need to be on your ships, and again, might not get anything that you're looking for, but take what you can get, right? By the time you're caught up, the opponent could be doing something completely different. Or, you could get to the point like I did in the last game where you get to round 8 and you don't even have enough money to be able to go out and fight with your cool ships. So what are you building towards? It just doesn't jive with what I want, from a game.
Well, just to bring up one other thing you mentioned when you said that you see your neighbors smoke the NPC ships. This is another point, uh, another interaction point with just pure randomness,
Yes. Yeah.
which is the early game battles with the NPC ships. And we've seen people win effortlessly. We've seen people get totally destroyed and have their economies ruined. And why is that in this kind of game?
Right. And
Why is there even that possibility? It's like it
I
doesn't.
think the natural reaction is like, well, just don't fight them. You could explore 3 times and be completely surrounded by
Yeah,
these
I mean,
NPC
you might
ships and
not
have
have.
no choice but to fight
Yeah, I
them,
was gonna say, like, whether or not you have the choice to fight them or not fight them is also random. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you're just undermining yourself by not being able to even have an economy. So, like, you have to
right,
do it. And early game is the point of the game where you're the most subject to RNG. Like, you don't have things modifying the dice rolls that
right,
significantly. Your ships don't have many hit points or high damage or anything. And yeah, it's a good idea to pick up a ship part or two before you fight the NPCs if you can, but that's a lot of actions and you still might lose. And
right.
just because at the end of the day,
You
you're
could
just
win
roll
against
trying.
the NPC and still be in a bad spot if they kill a cruiser or something, I
Yeah,
mean, that's
and
a
yeah,
big
the
hit to the
NPCs blow
economy.
up one ship. Maybe you can't fight any of the other NPCs, and you're just sitting there, staring at your hands for another round of the game while you're trying to rebuild because you didn't roll a six for 3 turns in a row. It's like it seems so absurd that there's a modern system that has that sort of thing in it. And uh, just to add another controversial opinion, this is also why I prefer Star Wars Rebellion to War of the Ring, because even though War of the Ring is really thematic and cool, the combat coming down to chucking, looking for sixes, just I almost just oh man, I just hate that. I feel like that's so dated. And it's
Hmm.
not a good type of dated where I'm like, that's classic board gaming. It's like, come on, haven't we like aren't we like 20 years past this kind of board game mechanic where you're just looking for a six? Like
Right,
this
right,
is like literally the most this is like playing like Yahtzee or like Parcheesi or something. Like I
right.
mean, I feel like a modern board game designer should not be in their like designing, especially a very Euro styled game, be like, all right, and then the two players will roll to see who gets sixes. And
Yeah,
because, you've got a -2 and I've got a -2 and you've got a +2 and I've got a +2, so they all cancel out. We're all rolling for sixes in the end anyway. None of
yeah.
this stuff matters. None of the upgrades matter. We're all just rolling for sixes. And, whoever rolls the best, it's just like
Right.
Risk. I mean, like,
Maybe you're rolling for fives, you
maybe
know?
you're rolling for fives. Yeah. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
that's as a
Yeah.
percentage increase, that's pretty
Maybe
good.
you're even rolling for fours while the opponent is rolling 3 times as many dice as you. So is it really any different? The
Yeah.
point being, this
Yeah.
this game, even where you're building up, it accelerates to nothingness. In the same way as Ben mentioned, with not really being able to take more actions in the later game after you've built up this really cool um, system of planets and your ships are all upgraded and you feel like you've built towards this really cool end game. Well, you don't really have any more actions because you're so concerned and have to be about overheating your economy. It's the same thing with the sort of arms race in this game. You could get a +2 to all your dice rolls and your opponent might get a -2. Well, you're right back to square one, just with one less ship part on your to work with and to do cool things with.
Yeah. Everything feels bad. Like that's how I feel in this game a lot of the time. Is just like I'm taking my turns and I'm just like I'm not really like enjoying the combat. I'm not really enjoying like worrying about my like economy. It's like not very fun stress to me. It's just like, oh man, am I gonna get like screwed by dice here? And it's like I like and I felt terrible the entire last game we played. Like my cruiser I was playing the faction that's like good at combat. That's their whole thing. I started with a cruiser. I went to go try to fight some NPCs. Will rolled like four sixes, even though I had like three hull, and like blew up my cruiser like almost immediately while he was rolling for the NPCs. And like I was like, man, I feel like I'm totally taken out of the game. These other guys have like way more systems than me. They both have like colonized so much more than me. And then like the final turn of the game, I'm like fighting them. I'm like, I don't even know if this is really like mattering all that much. Like you always feel starved for material. I never feel like I can build as many ships as I want. I never feel like I can do as much as I want. I end up fighting Will, giving him some victory points because he participated in a combat, but I need some of these combat medals as well, which is also somewhat random because you're drawing from a bag of 1 through 4, and you get
Yeah,
more if you have a
Yeah,
big
like
fight, but you might not get the number, you might not get a good number even if you're drawing 5.
yeah,
Like
that's
you
right.
another
might
thing.
just get like a
Why
bunch
is
of
that?
1s and a 2.
Why
Like,
is that number random? Why is the amount of victory points you get from a combat in this game not based on like how hard you won or like how
Right.
many
It doesn't
enemies
make
you
any sense.
destroyed or like anything? Like it just like
Well,
why does that exist? Why
Will,
does
I
that
don't I
mechanic
don't think we
exist?
mentioned this to you, but in the two-player game that Ben and I played the faction that starts out with 26 money. They also have the benefit of starting out with 2 random medals, right?
Mhm.
I started out with 2 1s randomly. I proceeded to do a I think I had 5 more combats, and a number of those combats I was drawing 2, 3. There was one of them I drew 4 medals, and by the end of the game, I had 2 1s and 2 2s for my medals because I just drew all shit medals, and it was like, I mean, how much more can I mitigate that, you know?
I mean,
And
it's just
given probably most games that's not going to happen, you're not going to have anywhere near that bad of luck, but
I just have to ask
why implement
why.
that? Why allow
Well,
for that extra
why?
point of
I
RNG?
keep asking why with this game. Why? Why
Yeah.
is that even a thing?
right.
Why is the tech market the way it is? Okay, so just
Yeah.
a quick little bit of
Yeah.
backstory. So I'll excuse the first edition of Eclipse having this tech market. This game, New Dawn for the Galaxy came out in 2011. So at that time, Comet had not been released yet. And however, Comet released the year afterwards, 2012. So Second Dawn for the Galaxy came out in a post-Comet board game environment, which means they knew about Comet's tech and yet they chose to ignore it. A sin that I cannot forgive. And I think it's one of those things where like the tech in Comet is like, hey, I mean, if you played Eclipse Second Dawn, and hell, you could even put 2 in each slot for tech. So that way, it's still scarce-ish. Like if 2 people take the text, it's gone. It would be a better game.
Yeah, I
It's
think
like,
so.
hey, it's just like, hey, like I want to build a ship that's got a lot of torpedoes. Cool. Well, there's 2 torpedo slots. Those are going to be contested because torpedoes are strong. If people want to value that more than economy techs, they're free to. It would mean that if people are screwed early on with like no access to money in their economy, they can get the orbital tech guaranteed early and and have an economy that actually works and doesn't overheat instantly. Like I can't think of a single downside
Yeah.
to having the tech market all be laid out to begin with and letting people plan around it and being like, hey, like maybe I don't research this round because I want to save up tech to get some crucial tech that's later on round 2 and have that early game. Like it promotes strategic thinking, it promotes planning, which I assume is it's a fundamental part of this type of game normally. And there's no random like getting 4 star-based techs in a row. I mean, I'm boggled truly by the fact that like some of the mechanics in this game are what they are, and frankly, I'm surprised that it isn't called out more. Whenever I hear people talking about this game, I do hear people complain about the exploration, which we've spoken about. I think even people who like this game will like admit like, oh yeah, the exploration's kind of whatever. It's kind of random. You just have
All
to like
all the
fight through it.
systems feel the same. Like all of the
Yeah.
like I'm never excited to turn over a hex. It's like, oh, this one has one more industry. This one has one industry and a money, and this one has like an industry and a tech. Like
Well,
they're
Ben,
not. They're never exciting. Like
Ben, you bring up a really great point, which I wanted to bring this up, and stop me if I'm talking too much about about Eclipse. But let's talk about the theme of this game.
Mm.
This game feels like it was made by people embarrassed to be making a Space 4X game. You know,
Hmm.
I
Interesting.
think I think like Ben brought this up when he was reading the lore of his supposedly aggressive warlike faction, and I was thinking
Right.
about this the whole rest of the day, which is that the most aggressive warlike faction in the game like did one warlike thing in the collective memory of the factions of the game, and it was just a misunderstanding. You know,
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
backstory. They're like, these guys are known as like warmongers, but only because there was a misunderstanding 200 years ago that they've been forgiven for and they haven't fought since. And it's
yeah.
like,
They're
that
what are we doing here? Give
yeah,
me
like
give me
that
a reason to
encapsulates
fight,
this
you
game for
know?
me. Like, what
Yeah,
are
it
we?
yeah.
doesn't make any
I,
Also,
sense.
the mecha ball in the center of the galaxy is actually just like some global defense system that people like put together to defend the like center of the galaxy, and
it's an
you're just like,
intergalactic shopping mall you're blowing up. It's not like it's not a war sun. You know,
Right.
it's
right,
like
yeah,
it's not even a military. It's not even capable of like moving or like being aggressive militarily. You're just going there and blowing up the defense system of a planet that just wants to have a huge shopping mall,
Right.
and
yeah.
then ruining everybody's day for like no reason. That doesn't even make sense. Why are
Shame
you?
on you, player, for wanting to blow up that thing in the middle. They were
Yeah, it's like
peaceful. They were civilians. Shame on you for wanting to play a war game, you
yeah,
know?
it's like they're and it's like, oh, you wanted to fight? No, no, we're gonna make it so hard for you to fight. Maybe you'll get a couple fights in at the end, but no more than four. Don't fight more than four times.
Right.
Four is the haram number of
Yeah.
combats. You know, like
Yeah,
Especially if the opponent hasn't fought more than 4 times, because then you're just helping them out, giving them their
yeah, that
combat
happened. Ben
medal.
helped me by fighting me. I was accidentally locked off, just due to like the way the tiles had come out. Ben helped me by showing up to fight me because he had more combat tiles and I needed
right.
more. So and it
And I was
wasn't
like,
like yeah. Go
and it
ahead.
was
Sorry.
completely vague as to whether or not, like, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like win. Like, I feel like I'm not in contention at all. I feel like I had such a bad first round. I feel like these guys, their economy is so hot. They're doing so good. They've got orbitals. They've got monoliths. It's crazy. There's no way I'm gonna catch up. And the score total ended up being I scored 37, Blake scored 37, and Will scored 35. And
Yeah.
it was like, oh wow, it's like really tightly balanced. Like we all were like in the same score thing, but I felt terrible the whole game, and I can't really pinpoint like exactly what I was like. I feel like I guess I could have been like picking my nose and making like horrible decisions this whole game, and I still would have been like,
In
in
contention.
contention. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
like
I think what happened was you did control the central planet, which is worth 4.
right.
I think that's what got there. But I
Yeah,
do agree that
Will
it
and I
does.
were mostly controlling like outer galaxy planets, tier 3 planets that were
Yeah,
mostly
the
worth
4
like
points
1 or 2,
mattered.
and you had more of the ring 2 and ring 1 planets that are worth a little bit more. Yeah.
But
I get
I
it.
do
Yeah.
I do agree. You bring up something good, Ben, which is like I don't really like feel like I'm ever making like a good decision in this game, or like I'm just doing whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Like I'm
I
just like you're just like
doing whatever.
I'm just like a moth on the cosmic wind,
Yeah.
like I'm blown by these forces that are like kind of outside of my control, like it's mostly just like, oh, the tech came out that happened to be like good for my strategy. And like they're okay, I hate the advanced techs. Like they feel like such nothing burgers that should just be like, just let me colonize the stupid planets, like, because I have to spend a resource to do that anyway, which is the colony ships, and I have to spend time doing that anyways. Like I hate having to research advanced economy, advanced mining, advanced research, like it's just like, oh, I'm just locked out of these extra planets. I especially hate the wild card planets that are also sometimes gatekept behind a tech where you have to research to be able to use the advanced wildcard planets that can be
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Because the planets are balanced around this idea that they might have a
They're balanced on their potential.
right. They're balanced around their potential. That's a more elegant way to say it than I was gonna splutter out.
Okay, good.
Because you can
That's
have
good.
these spots that are locked behind. You can't even place your little your cube down that's going to accelerate your economy without having one of these advanced techs. And it's like, I don't know. The whole thing kind of falls flat in the end. And it's very, very surprising to me. I mean, I'm sure you guys feel the same. I'm very, very surprised how well rated this one is, um, and how popular it is. How many people have played it and then continued to rate it well.
Yeah, I'm sure if anything is going to get us in trouble in the comments, it's the fact that we don't like this game, and that we strongly don't like this game. I think it's, and like I said, it's not that I hate Euros. Like I said, I mean, hey, if Gaia Project, somebody's tabling Gaia Project, I'll play Gaia Project, or
Yeah.
something else like that. It's just that Gaia Project knows it's a Euro, and it plays like a Euro. Like
Yeah.
this game, like I don't know what it wants to be. Is it like a random Ameritrash game? Is it a Euro game? Like the game itself doesn't know, and it's
Right.
like schizophrenic. It's like you can pick a lane and stick to it, but there are a lot of like weirdly clashing ideas here, and it's weird, and it's a shame. This is another game that I wanted to like. The production is beautiful. You table
Yes.
it. It's so easy to put on the table.
Hmm.
It's so easy to get lined up. You've got your fun little ways to track your resources, and your ships are different design for the different
And
colors.
what a great selling point too of like you can have, and not that it is a great giant beautiful space opera, but what a great selling point to say, well, you can have your space opera and eat it too, right? You can have it in a short amount of time. You can do this
Yeah,
game really really quickly, you know, for what it seems to be on the surface. And I think all three of us were very much in the camp of like, I want to like this game so bad right from the onset. Like, I really want to like this game. Not even saying it in the negative light of, after the fact and realizing I'm not really enjoying myself. From the very, very start, we were all so much in that camp of, this is exciting. I want to like this. This looks like something we're going to enjoy. And I don't know what you're supposed to grab onto here.
Yeah, it like the first play, I mean, like I think we were like all like, oh, I mean, that was kind of cool, but it's like we as we played it more, it's just like I don't know how much interesting depth there is to a lot of my decisions. Like I don't really feel like I'm making a lot of decisions that are like interesting or impactful. Like I said, I'm a moth on the cosmic wind. Like it's
your
just like
cosmic jellyfish.
yeah, it's
Mm,
like you just kind of end up like floating through this game and kind of uh like like it has decisions in it, but I don't feel like the decisions are
right.
all that like interesting, and I don't feel like the decisions are all that different. I think we all played as humans for the first game, and we were like, that's probably the way to do it, so that we because it like so that we it's not too
We got the core of the
complicated for
game.
our
Yeah,
person. And we were like, man, it feels like we were all doing the same stuff, and it's like, well, that must have been because we were all humans. And then like we try the asymmetrical factions, and it's like, oh no, that's just kind of the game. Like
Hmm.
even the
Yeah.
asymmetrical factions don't really change that much. It's
Right.
like, oh no, I am just kind of doing the same stuff that I was before. Like
I I want to add a slight point of disagreement. I don't think it's true that your decisions aren't of consequence, and I don't think it's true. You said earlier, like maybe you could have been picking your nose and doing whatever, and you would have ended up in the same point total. I don't think that's true. But what I would say is that it's you. Firstly, you have some turns that kind of play themselves, which is not fun. And secondly, even the turns where you do have decisions to make, the difference between like it's pretty easy to come up with a pretty good turn. And the coming up with something that's much better, it's the benefit is going to be so marginal that by the end, and you start looking back and you say, well, why did I win, or why did I do as well as I did, or why did I do as bad as I did? And each of the small gains or losses you get from optimal or inoptimal decision making are so minor that who cares at the end of the day, right? You
well, more
can't. It doesn't feel
importantly,
like you can make big plays in this.
more importantly, those minute optimizations are going to be totally washed away by just what combat tiles you draw.
Yeah,
you
totally
know, if your
overshadowed by the
optimal
combat
play gained
tiles or
2
whatever.
VP
Yeah,
more than you would have otherwise, but they just drew, all the 4 combat tiles, then you lose anyway. So
right.
it's just,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
All
an
right.
unworthy pursuit.
Shall we move to the concluding segment? You guys want to have anything else to add, do you think?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So I'll go first here just to make it easy for you guys. Usually I like to sit back and see what you guys do. But first of all, I'm going to reevaluate Fractal. I'm going to raise my score in our first video on the podcast. I'm going to raise it from a 6.5 to a 7 because I think Fractal is a better Eclipse. And I think if I was ever presented with like both games, I would always pick Fractal. And it's not even that I love Fractal. It's just that I think the optimization puzzle of Fractal is a better optimization puzzle than this game because the randomness of Fractal is relatively low. I don't love the combat, but it sure beats dice chucking. The action card market and the tech market, I don't love in Fractal, but I still prefer them to this game's equivalents, and etc. But anyway, I'm gonna give Eclipse gonna give it a 5.5. Actually, that may sound harsh, but that's how I feel, honestly.
Yeah, I guess I'll go in. I've been this game has made me very mad. Uh, uh,
Oh damn,
and
it's not about to go lower than me.
no, I mean like it's made me very upset, and and that's because like I want it to. I think I think the things that upset me the most are the ones that are like just kind of middle of the road. I think I'm giving it like a 6. I'm actually like I think rating it higher than you. Like it's a pretty game. It's competently made, and like I don't know how much of this is just um it's not my cup of tea, but I also do feel like it has a lot of like glaring issues with just like replayability. Like I think our first play, like I came away the most like optimistic, and by the time I've played it 3 times, I'm one of the more pessimistic of us. Of like, well, I don't really feel that interested in playing it again. Like if somebody brought it to the table, I would play it. Um, I'd be interested in seeing if some of these problems are better at like a full player table. Like if there's 6 players, would we have more interaction? But I think I would also just come away with being pissed off again because I feel like it would just be like, oh well, you know, like we ended up fighting over these tiles, and it ended up being this, you know, again just like down to the dice. I pulled the bad battle medals like when I played, you know, like I don't know. I just don't think that it would be I don't know if there's anything that would I don't know if 6 players would really fix any of the issues that I have with the game. I think there would have to be so many different changes to this game for me to like what it has going on that at that point it's just like commit or like it's just a different game, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm maybe a little bit too quick to start wanting to tweak games to fit what I want a little bit more.
no, I think you usually
And
have good suggestions. You had that good idea about El Grande last time we played as well, actually.
yeah, I think I usually do an all right job with it, but there is something nice about seeing through like the full vision of the designers and having a respect for that. And I try to, in my mind at least, stay true to the spirit of the game whenever I'm suggesting some sort of like minor tweak. And I don't think that's possible with this game to tweak it in a way that stays true to the spirit of the game while also making it something that I want to play. To Ben's point there, it's so far off for me. I'm actually a little bit surprised how highly you guys rated it. I'm going a good deal lower. I rated Galactic Renaissance a 4.5, and while I do think that this game is maybe more of a complete package than that, I would way rather play Galactic Renaissance than this. And as a result, I'm going to give this one a 4. Again, it just falls really, really flat for me. I'm in the same camp as Ben of becoming less and less enthused about this game. And I also think that, and I hope you guys will share some of your thoughts that we've talked about this outside of the podcast, um, relating to sort of the comparison between this and Dead Reckoning,
I was
because I
about
Well,
to
think
give
it's very
I was
fascinating.
yeah.
I was gonna say, well, thanks for being honest, Blake. I know it's toughest for you because you're the one who took the plunge on this one, but it's good
Again,
to hear.
it's a one that should be easy to sell, you know.
Yeah, that
So
that
that's
that is
always
true.
good.
That it has a fan base. So yeah. But anyway, I think before we start talking about TI, I do think we should just briefly mention, if you've played Eclipse and you're watching this video, listening to this podcast, and you're like, man, these guys don't know what they're talking about. They think Eclipse sucks and it's like my favorite game. Well, let me just tell you, please play Dead Reckoning or play Comet, and preferably both. They're both great games. I might retroactively raise my 8.75 on Dead Reckoning to a 9 after we've like again just looking at what else is in the same weight range and stuff. But both of these games do everything this game does, but better. You can literally just go across the board. You got better combat, you have better tech trees, you have you have got shipbuilding that's actually integrated into the gameplay better in Dead Reckoning and in this game. You have these nice incentives to fight each other that aren't necessarily going to be warping the endgame victory points drastically in a way that doesn't feel good. You have most importantly, at least in my opinion, you have so many incentives to interact with each other at the table, and you're always getting up in each other's business, and there are positive interactions and there are negative interactions, but they all combine in a way that makes the whole sort of the act of playing those games, you're way more engaged. You care about what's happening. I don't care that some other person is exploring a tier 3 tile and Eclipse on the other side of the galaxy. Like I could not be in the room. I just don't care. I
Yeah,
care a
you.
lot in
Yeah,
Dead Reckoning if somebody's taking like the upgrade card that I want, or they're coming onto my island and swooping through and dropping some cubes, or in Kemet, obviously everyone deeply cares, like, oh my god, he's got 2 temples, he could get a permanent VP, I gotta swoop in and snipe him. He's at tier 3 blue, I have to take that tech before he does. But both these games have a lot of the same. These games have a lot of the same ideas, a lot of the same DNA. And as I said, Kemet, the first edition of Comet, the first edition of Eclipse came out 1 year apart from each other. However, these games just execute all these ideas better. I can't, and so I just can't recommend purchasing
yeah.
this game over those.
Here is the epiphany that I had when playing with Blake on at like about the Dead Reckoning comparison, because I think it's so much more useful than TI4. I was looking at the little ship, the tiny one, and I was like, I've got these cool engines. Wouldn't it be cool if I had a reason to trick out my interceptor class ship with like just engines? Like, it would be really cool if there was a good reason for me to have 12 movement and like be able to explore that part of the game and be like, maybe running and grabbing resources and stuff. And I was like, Dead Reckoning has that. Like, there's reasons to make really asymmetrical cards in your like crew in Dead Reckoning, and it feels really good because you're like,
Right.
I'm the guy that's like picking up treasure and delivering it back to my home. That's the thing that I'm doing. I have a niche that I've discovered. Again, I don't feel like there's like really a reason to build your ships all that differently in this game in Eclipse. They more or less, it's like if you slap on the best reactor you can find, you get as much damage as you can, you try to get as much hull and maybe get some minuses or pluses to hit depending on who you're fighting. If somebody else has shields and they have minuses to hit, don't even bother getting a dang computer on there. You're going to be hitting on sixes anyway. Like,
Yeah.
there's no like it mostly just ends up being like, well, I do good damage, I can take some damage or I can avoid hits. Like, all of the ships are more or less the same. I think in one of the
Yeah.
games me and Blake played, I made this ship that I absolutely hated playing because it was just one big gun and it had like 3 hull. It was the interceptor and it was hitting on sixes. And it was just like, okay, I'm waiting to roll a 6 every time I'm playing this, and it's just like, I'll win when I roll a 6. And we're just going and going, and that's just what we're waiting for. It's got like a -2 to hit on it. It's impossible to hit, so they're also trying to roll a 6. I hate playing this thing. I hate using this ship, but it seems like, it's not that it's
Right.
decent.
Sometimes that's the best you can do with what you're offered, and to be forced into that position where you're playing something that you dislike sucks. Whereas in Dead Reckoning, you look out, and by the time the whole map is explored, um, is this true outside of 3-player games? I think so.
Yeah, in a
But
4-player, you just change the number of open ocean tiles.
okay, you just change the number of open ocean tiles. So in a 3-player game, once the full map is explored, you'll look at it and you'll say, okay, well there's 12 like card upgrade options that I could go for, and some of them are going to be harder to get to, and some of them are going to be more expensive to pick up, and I'm going to have to weigh those options, right? And so there's some interesting decision space there, but all of them are typically like quite cool, and the decision space of like what am I actually going to put on my card? How am I going to customize my build is so open. Whereas, as Ben has mentioned in Eclipse, you very much have to build, kind of one type of ship. And one would argue that, well, okay, well you can go minus, you can get the shields and go -2 or -1 maybe on your ships and make them harder to hit, or you could do +1 or +2 and make them easier to hit others, or you could get more hull, or you could do this or that. It ends up feeling very samey, and the way that they balance these upgrades and against the energy cost, your ships are going to be very similar to everybody else's ships at any given point in the game, unless they've made some huge mistake or perhaps have been like totally screwed by the RNG and have not been offered, the quality of upgrades that you have. So yeah, I think it is a really good comparison. And Will, I would disagree a little bit about, maybe disagree is the wrong word. I don't think that Komet is as apt a comparison as Dead Reckoning
I
is.
mostly just bring it up because of the tech tree, because it's sort of like a
Yes,
how to do this type of tech
right.
tree properly.
I I would offer that if you have played Eclipse and you really like it, definitely try out Dead Reckoning because it does so much of the same stuff but just better. Like the things that are exciting about Dead Reckoning and the things that are exciting about Eclipse, I think are very similar, but Dead Reckoning just executes on them better. And I think all of our opinions. Komet is maybe, Will mentioned earlier that it feels like Eclipse doesn't really know what it wants to be. And some of the things that it moves towards, but just ends up feeling confused on, Komet does really, really well. And so if you want
Komet's
to see,
focused.
Komet is very focused. Komet has come in
Yeah.
and solved all these issues that other area control games have. And so if you want to get a taste of like, well, what could some of these things feel like? What could some of these area control elements, how could they be made to feel more exciting? Then try Komet as well. But yeah, there's other better games.
I mean, there's also dwellings in this weight range, and
Oh yeah, that Dwellings
dwellings is
is a
also
good comparison too.
dwell
Yeah,
and dwellings. Hey, if you want to play one of these games, but you don't want to play one that doesn't have an amazing insert on the level of Eclipse, well, you got dwellings in there too in the mix. But
right.
I wanted to talk about Space Empires 4X, but we're kind of getting on a bit in the podcast, so we'll save that for another time. But another game that I would recommend in a
Yeah,
similar weight range.
similar shipbuilding and combat system in that. Really kind of the same, other than that it's not randomized by what techs are available.
Anyway, all right, you ready to move on?
TI
Yeah.
4.
All right, so Twilight Imperium 4th edition. 4.32 weight, so the heaviest game we've talked about so far, technically. 8.6, rank overall 5.
Wow.
And unlike, well, I should say unlike, I think this deserves a spot in the top 10 board games. Uh,
Yeah.
Similarly to Gloomhaven, in the sense that I think this is a game, actually more than Gloomhaven, that has a long history. So
Hmm.
I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but Twilight Imperium First Edition was FFG's like first game. It was
Yeah,
like
I
the
watched a
game.
little mini documentary on it. It
Yeah,
was very fascinating.
yeah, it's like the game that started their company. And FFG has been for many years, and less so today, but for many years was like it was the company that was pushing the envelope for hobby board games in a lot of ways. And Twilight Imperium, the evolution of Twilight Imperium from first to fourth edition kind of mirrors like the growth of the industry and
Hmm.
in kind of a funny way. So it's like the history
Yeah.
of TI is like the history of the last 30 years of board games or whatever. But But anyway, without waxing on too much about that, how do you guys feel about the weight 4.32? Do you think that's about accurate for this game?
I think so. It's kind of weird. So here's the metaphor that I'm thinking of. Uh, as I entered the like hobby like of board gaming, TI4 is like this giant obelisk lurking on the horizon. You know, like you like enter the game shops, you look at the like top of the like shelf, and it's this massive box, and you're like, what is that game? And then like, you know, whoever you're playing fucking scout and show with is like, oh no, you're not ready for that. You know, like,
You're 10
you
years
know,
10 years too early to buy that box, kiddo.
yeah, like you're not old enough to ride that ride. Be careful what you're
Oh my
dreaming for
god.
there. You know, it's like it's got this reputation, which is well earned, of like, yeah, you gotta clear your schedule for that game. You know, you're gonna be playing that a while. You know, it,
Interestingly, this game's reputation even goes into like other communities. Like if I'm
Yeah.
like drafting MTG or something, I haven't as much lately.
I was just finishing my point to say that the weight rating, surely people have conflated game length with complexity, when really that weight rating should just be complexity. And I don't think that there's any one thing in Twilight Imperium that is particularly complex. There's a lot of like medium complexity things going on, and maybe when you add all those up, it it's pretty complex. But I don't think there's any one thing
yeah.
that's like super hard to understand in this game. It's pretty
PDS.
approachable, really.
Will hates PDSs.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, PDSs. I'll have to amend my statement. That's true. PDSs are one of those things where like you always have to reference the rule book of like how the hell
Yeah,
does that work? Because they're
yeah,
very unintuitive. The ruling on
Well, and then you have
PDSs.
some factions that have special PDSs, and it's like,
Yeah.
right.
what
Well,
if when is the moving count for Deep Space Canon? But besides PDSs, I think PDSs are like a whole tier above anything else. If you're
Yeah.
in a game where nobody builds PDSs, like the game is like not even over a four
Right.
weight.
Even most of
there,
like the rules exceptions for each faction aren't that crazy hard to understand. You know.
yeah, there is some of that with the factions. Like sometimes you get some weird interactions with the rules between factions, and that's where some of the
Yeah.
complexity comes in, where it's like, oh well, this one has this special rule. Like every time I've played TI4 with somebody who's new, it's like, here is the rule for this system, and then everybody at the table goes, well, except if you're Nalu, or like, you know, or like, except
Yeah.
if you're this faction,
Yeah.
then they do this. Like every dreadnoughts are the only things that have sustained damage. Unless you're Federation of Soul, then your carriers also have sustained damage.
Or
And,
Or
God forbid Titans.
I was
Ugh.
gonna say,
unless you're
or the Titan
Titans, yeah.
cruisers, the biggest, the strongest ship in the game. But the I will say, and I'm willing to defend this game on the rules exceptions because, and this is kind of looping back around. I said I didn't want to directly compare these two games, but I think the area where I most want to compare these two games, where it's the most logical for me to compare these two games, is on theme.
Hmm.
Like I said, Eclipse is kind of embarrassed of being what it is. It's like it doesn't really want to be like a war game, and that's fine, I guess. But like this game is reveling in what it is.
Yeah.
It's like the lore of these factions is crazy and cool, and I haven't read them, but there's like TI novels out there and stuff, and there's
Yeah.
the TI, all sorts of TI lore and the appendices and the codices, and
And even on the
and
player mats, you know.
and even on the player mats, and I think each of the factions feel totally like that faction. Like the thing
Yeah.
that's really special about TI4, the most special thing, is that the factions feel so much. They feel exactly like whatever that trope faction should be. Like the
I,
space pirates feel totally like space pirates. Like the sentient AI, my favorite faction of the game, Necrovirus, has all these unique things that totally make it feel like it's assimilating tech in like this really cool way. And then like all the factions have this, and so when these rules exceptions come up, it's kind of like you kind of mentally excuse them because it's like, oh well, of course the
Yeah.
space turtles are
There's sort of
prone
a
to
logic
turtling.
behind the
You know,
exceptions, right?
yeah, there's like a kind of a logic behind it that kind of makes it less heavy, I
They
guess,
they
because it's
they
not
tell you a
arbitrary.
story that makes it make sense, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
through
yeah.
the
It's like
theming.
it makes sense in the context of like the theme of the game and that faction where you're like you're able to sort of compartmentalize it in your brain and it all sticks because of
Oh,
oh god.
we
Do
lost
we lose Ben?
Ben. Weird.
Ben.
Well, he'll be back surely.
He'll be back. I hope.
I'll send him a message in the Discord if you want to continue to make your point.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, I guess my point is just that I think the theme of oh wait, I think he sent me a message. Oh yeah, no, that's just you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It says
well,
it kicked them out.
it
Oh
kicked him
man.
out. Jeez, what is going on today? We've had so many tech issues.
Oh, there he is.
Back.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay, you're back. Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry about that.
Hello.
It wasn't me. I want to hear you talk, Ben. It wasn't me, I swear.
It's okay.
But anyway, we're just talking about like the theme of the game. But I think it's just worth bringing that up, you know, because I think part of why this game is fun is because I think you just get into you almost kind of get into like thinking as your faction, like in
Yeah.
this game. You know,
Yeah, I
it
love
just
that.
kind of happens. I mean, maybe that's also because the game is so long that like you
You start
gradually
going crazy.
you start well yeah, that is a real thing, brain fatigue in this game, and like you gradually as you go freaking insane over the 8-hour game length, you start thinking you are the sentient AI or you're the like weird like wolves that lives on asteroids, and you start confusing what's real and what's not. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree 100% on that. You go ahead, Ben. Yeah.
I love playing the Hakan. You know, I had a great time playing the Hakan. I love the, wheeling and dealing you can do there. And there's plenty of that. That's like half of the game. And I would say that is like a big chunk of the game length. It depends on the people that you're playing with if they can like negotiate quickly. Because
This
like
is yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
you can go long if you have somebody who's like, going like, hey, I'll like here's some of the conversations that happen in TI. It's like I'll pay you a trade good to like give me your like promissory note, and then some other asshole across the table will go, I'll pay you a trade good to not give it to him. And then you're like, and then you end up in this like cross negotiation. It's like, well, okay, I'll pay you 2 trade goods to give it to me, and then it's like, I'll throw in an action card if you don't give it to him. It's like a whole other party joins in.
It's so funny. Yeah, this game is like more than any other game I can think of, the game length is going to be determined by who you're playing with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's possible to have like a 6-hour game of TI, which is swimmingly fast for this game. If you don't have anybody that has like that'll bog things down, and if people negotiate quickly, but inevitably there's going to be one, maybe two people in the group that just have to negotiate on every single point, and
Yeah. And that's where a lot of the fun is to be had
it
Yeah.
is
too,
fun.
to
It
be
is fun.
fair, right?
However, I will say that like the funny thing about this game is that invariably this is how a game of TI goes. The first 3 or 4 rounds of the game, it's going to take like an hour and a half, and you'll be like, "Whoa, we're gonna break a record. We're really flying through this game of TI." And then you hit like the agenda phase of round 4, round 5, and then things slow to a halt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then suddenly every action, and at that point it makes sense because everybody at that point is expanded to their logical boundaries, which now border other people. There's probably going to be somebody on Mechatol Rex at that point. Sometimes there's even somebody on Mechatol on turn 1 or 2, especially if somebody's playing Winu, God forbid. And if that happens, then people will be arguing over like, oh, should we get rid of Mechatol? Who's the problem? I'm the problem. No, he's the problem. Well, and then somebody's secretly the problem, but they're hiding their secret objectives and waiting to score them. And you have to discern all these things, and it's just pure chaos. It's basically like trying to play. It's like trying to play a board game on like the market floor in the New York Stock Exchange. That's what a game of TI is like. Once you hit like the full blown agenda phase stuff.
Yeah. I will say the the agenda phase is one thing that I would love for them to tweak in future editions. I think the agenda phase ends up having a lot of fun negotiation. Like you end up like talking a lot, and like you kind of enjoy some of the presence of stuff of the other people. It ends up like having some fun moments, but there are often times where you're like, and this is kind of thematic. It's like oftentimes you're negotiating over, and this isn't a real card, but it's like galactic sewage lines, like this completely like inconsequential thing, and everybody's like playing writers or like, like everybody's like, I want the galactic sewage pipe to go to my home planet, and they're arguing really hard for it. And then the end of the agenda phase is somebody plays an action card and goes, actually, I get the galactic sewage pipe, even though I didn't vote for it because I have this action card and nobody's sabotaging me.
Yeah, those are
And like,
those are my least favorite action cards in the game. The ones where it's like, actually, I am the elected person, and it's like after
Yeah.
you had like a 20-minute argument about it, and it's like, oh my god, are you serious?
Right. And
yeah,
it's not like that person can say beforehand, well, I actually
Yeah,
have
I
this
mean,
card, because it's important, you have two agendas that you vote on. It's important to get everybody to go ahead and use any other cards that they may have, or maybe they get out their it's not a counter spell, whatever the hell it's called,
sabotage.
sabotage.
sabotage. Yeah, then maybe they get their sabotage out on something else, and maybe there's the next agenda that's going to be voted on anyways, so you're trying to get people to use their votes in advance. So you can't just come out in advance and say, well, let me save you all 20 minutes, here's my card. It's not possible. You have to let it play out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, yeah, and there are factions that increase the length of the game. I think Emprian is one of them, because like one of their special rules is like you can let people move through you, and also you have like all of these other like weird little deals that you can do, like,
Well, they can. They
hey,
can. They also get. They'll eventually. They also get to grant that movement bonus adjacent to anomalies,
yeah, they
Right.
can
which
give
which
that to
also
other people.
which
Yeah,
turns into a huge negotiation thing
yeah,
later
Yeah.
on.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, one additional movement can be the difference between stopping
Oh,
someone
it's
from winning
huge.
and
It's
or not.
huge.
It can be the difference between setting up a win for yourself or not.
Yeah.
That can be a lot.
Well, we've been kind of all over the place, but I think we should talk
yeah,
a little bit about just like the game structure and a little bit and like what's good and what's bad about it and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think so. This game has been around long enough, as I mentioned at the beginning, that they've worked out a lot of the kinks. I back 10,000 years ago when I was in college, I played third edition a lot. It was was actually one of the games that got me into the hobby. Us playing the original Dune 1979 version and this game, hobby board gaming at that point was a little bit less developed. But TI third edition was a really good game. We ended up having like a we had like a journal filled with all the house rules that we had.
Really.
There were so many things we changed, yeah, and we always voted on it. We actually had like an IRL agenda phase for house rules, and there were so many things that we had added by the end because we played it. I don't know how many times, but we played it a lot, and
Yeah.
so I have fond memories of this game, which may bias me slightly, but not for TI4, which I played relatively fewer times. But the point is at this point they've worked out a lot of the kinks, and I think the system is very solid. I think just the things like I'm activating the system to go in. Now I can't leave. Just the fact that that is kind of the core thing you do in the game. Like a lot of things are sort of related to that. It's like I'm activating the system to move in or explore or drop people off or start a battle. That's easy to understand for a newcomer. It's like, yeah, just put your little cardboard shit in and move in. And you can zuck people in from multiple locations as long as they can all get there. That's kind of easy to understand. I think that's always like that's the core of the game is just activating a system and doing something in it. And I think that flows well. And and similarly, what I like about it is that it leads to all sorts of interesting things just from having done that. It's like, oh, now he's locked in there, which means I can do this, which means I have to negotiate with someone else about this thing. Like someone doing something makes you care about it, which is the point we were talking about. It wasn't as interesting in Eclipse. Like I don't care what they're doing over there, but maybe some crucial border system is now locked, and the ships in there can't leave. Now I can bully him and be like, "Oh, your main fleet's locked in there, buddy. Give me a good reason not to come into your home system." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like it creates these conversation points just innately organically in the game system, and it's always visible. This is another point to bring up, which is that despite how much of a table hog this game is, it's actually really readable. I can stand up and look at the board and I know exactly what's going on. Obviously, I'm not going to know what secret objectives people have, but the board is eminently readable. The coloration, the graphics, the plastic, even just the little pieces of cardboard, each having their own little faction symbol on them. It all sort of results in the ability to just look at the board and know what's going on. Like if you go to the bathroom for 20 minutes, you're having some indigestion, you come back, the board's changed, you can look, you know what's happened basically. And in a game this size, that's important. That's really important.
It is, yeah, hugely.
And the combat in this game is dice chucking. It is just dice chucking, and I will defend that because it couldn't be anything else. You couldn't have a card based system for this game because it would take too long. Part of the best thing about dice based systems is usually that it's like once you've locked in and you're gonna fight somebody, you're just gonna roll. You know, like there's not a ton of more thinking that you have to do unless you have some action cards or like abilities or something. You kind of just are locked in and you're both going to roll the dice. And usually in this game, fighting is doesn't feel the best, and that's kind of part of the point. Is you want to only pick fights where you have overwhelming force, or negotiate where you can just be like, hey, get out of that planet and I will take it. I'm going to take it anyway, but just don't make me have to go land troops there. You know?
Yeah.
Like part of the combat not like being super like fleshed out and kind of just random is to be like, well, I'm gonna bring I'm gonna bring a big force if I'm going to do combat, or you just try to like be peaceful and negotiate and be like, please don't attack me, I'll give you trade goods, you know, like.
I'm
Yeah.
going to piggyback off that really quick and just say that one really important thing about it is dice chucking, but you're not just trying to roll sixes. And the type of combat that everybody dreads in this game, which is like one infantry versus one infantry, is the type of combat that every combat in like Eclipse is, or like War of the Ring or whatever, which is
Yeah.
that awful feeling like, oh god, this is just down to RNG now. Like if you've got like dreadnoughts in the battle, you've got 50% chance to hit without any bonuses, right? You're hitting on fives,
Yeah,
pluses, and
things
so
are
like
happening, like you
that's
are
what I mean is like each
progressing.
round of combat, it's extremely unlikely for a round of combat in TI for like nothing to get blown up. And there's
Right.
like it's just you don't really have those rounds where nothing happens unless it is just like one carrier versus one carrier, like one infantry versus one infantry or something. And sometimes that does happen, and everybody groans about it because like nobody's looking forward to it, and it's a pain in the butt. Everybody admits
Right.
that, even people who like the game. But
And
yeah,
that's
yeah, go
even
ahead.
thematic. Like you can even argue, like, you know, it's like, oh, we've got one infantry versus one infantry. They're going to be in the dang trenches down
Yeah,
there.
yeah, they're
You
like in the
know, like
trenches.
it's like,
Oh,
geez, like you know, we're really having to do this. You
yeah.
know,
I've
And
just thought of a
go ahead.
little something. I forget what video I was watching, but this guy was talking about the cultural significance of sumo wrestling in Japan. And where this ties in here, what they were talking about, they were like, well, Japan, we have these sumo wrestlers, and sumo wrestling is weird to an American audience because in sumo wrestling you have these guys who are, you know, training and training and training for these matches, and the match could last 10 seconds, you know. But the tie-in that I want to mention is that this guy posited that the reason that's popular in Japan is that the Japanese value the decisive act. And what he means by that is this idea of like all of this preparation, it can be for one moment, you know? We're not necessarily looking at these slow you know, build up of points or whatever, like you might see with baseball, where everybody's, you know, coming in and maybe having their little moment. And I feel like TI has some really fun decisive acts that happen, you know, and you can kind of decide to do that. You can't really decide to do that in Eclipse, you know. In TI there's this beautiful balance with the amount of ships that you can have in any one region. having a trade-off between that and like the number of actions and secondary actions you can trigger in a turn. I think that's a really fascinating system. And it's like, well, maybe I can forego having, you know, 5 actions this turn and maybe have 3 actions, but be able to have, you know, additional ships in any one system, so I can push all of these and really push the you know, one battle into my favor. And then, oh well, I'm opening myself up over here. You know,
Yeah, the simplification of your economy into tokens that you can exchange between sort of different aspects is it just works better than like you think. And a lot
yeah,
of people might play this game and not even really understand that like what is being portrayed there is your economic capability as a civilization. They just think of it as like, oh, it's like how many ships I can have. Oh, this is like how many tokens I can put down. Really, what that is like your civilization's ability to sustain a certain size fleet, your civilization's ability to like proactively do economic stuff, and your civilization's ability to like kind of proactively be spying and reacting on what other people are doing, because that's essentially what you're doing thematically when you like use a strategy token to like do follow somebody's tactical action.
Yeah. And the
um,
yeah,
strategy tokens are cool. Like it's this whole it's this another layer of politics, which is a lot of what TI4 is. Because you've got 8 different ones, and there's like politics in even choosing them. You know, it's like in a 6-player game, 2 of them are getting left out. So it's which 2 are getting left out, and can I rely on them being picked this round, or do I really need to pick them this round? What am I following? What like secondaries for things am I doing? And like sometimes you end up paying somebody to use one of them or not use one of them. There ends up being
Another
a lot of room
negotiation
for
point.
negotiation. Yeah, where it's like I don't have like you know, leadership hasn't been popped yet, so I don't have as many of these chits. I don't have anything in my secondary, so I really want to pay the guy who has warfare to delay like using warfare, so that I can follow warfare and build in my home system, because that's usually pretty impactful.
right.
There's plenty of stuff like that where you end up in these interesting negotiation points of, you know, I'm going to do this. And, you know, there are some agendas that I don't like where, like, there's one where you pick, where if it's enacted into law, you have to pick the strategy card for somebody else. Like everybody ends up like handing them, and that
Oh yeah,
becomes
that one. Jeez.
that would adds like an hour to the game when you probably
Oh
don't
yeah,
need it,
I should.
because it adds another layer of negotiation. I've
Thanks,
seen it played, and I've tried to like I usually try to just veto it
thanks for
because I
reminding me. I'm gonna remove that from my copy of the game.
but
Yeah,
even that is fun. You know, it's got a certain fun factor to it where it's like, yo, oh wow, we've like changed the rules of the game completely as we were playing it, and now we have to live in this new reality.
The
You know?
bizarro world, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I think the whole sort of mini game of like thinking about the order in which you'll be acting and how much you value certain actions, action. What do you even call them?
strategy cards.
Yeah,
Strategy token things. Yeah,
cards. Yeah.
the strategy cards. That whole thing is so much fun.
It is. And they
But
did a hell of a job balancing them, didn't they? I mean, the
there was
actual ordering of them is really well done.
there was even a small rebalance done in one of the codices, and so
Was
they
that
still.
to the diplomacy or
I think
what
it's
was it?
I
diplomacy and construction.
Yeah, you're right. It was
Ah,
diplomacy construction, but it was very minor. But it means that they're paying close attention to like that kind of thing in this game, and that's good. That's really good. I think that that part of the game is so core to the game, and so much fun. That part, like I
yeah,
was that part, that sort of tension, and that first part of a round when you're choosing those is like uh there's not many other games exactly like that. I get this. It's just kind of a similar vibe to like the Inish draft or something, where it's like, man, this is really important. I have to like make sure that certain things are taken and that I get the thing that I want, or at least the second best thing that I want. And
right.
you got to be ready to fight for it or negotiate for it.
Yeah.
And if you fail to, you might even say, "Well, I really," or maybe saying if you fail to isn't the correct way to go about it. But sometimes during that strategy card draft, right? Because it just goes in table order, starting with the person who had what is it, the politics last time, because they're going to get that speaker token and you can trade the speaker token, but usually it's going to end up with whoever took politics. A lot of the time you're thinking about that. I don't need politics, but hell, I want the speaker token so that next round I can get warfare, since I'm not
So
going to be able to get it this round. You
sometimes
know?
that's crucial to winning the game. Like when you
Oh
pick
yeah.
politics late in the game, it like can determine whether or not you're gonna win. You know,
Yeah,
because you might get
control of the
the
speaker token is a big deal in the end game for sure.
yeah.
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 I will
Just
say
having all those different touch points of like, you know, we can negotiate on almost anything, right? There's some things
yeah.
like action cards, for example, where unless the Hakan are in, you can't negotiate on it. That part almost surprises me because there's so many parts of the game that you can negotiate for, and so it's kind of a little weird that
That's
you
kind
have
of
this tangible thing that you feel like you should be able to
Yeah.
trade.
that's
Here's
oh, go ahead.
sorry. Here's a point I want to make. Tying into the part of negotiation, and here's the thing that's going to sound negative right off the bat. Ti4 is incredibly unbalanced. The all of the factions are completely asymmetrical. You sometimes often end up with like not the system that you want. You know, sometimes you can get screwed because you're last in draft pick for like the strategy cards in round one. But every TI player has a tool to deal with this, which is to whine as much as possible, which is you can definitely
Uh,
leverage the like it is asymmetrical, but it is balanced by the players. And
right,
if you're playing with a good group, they'll know who's getting screwed and who not to pick on and who's like
right,
who is going to jet off ahead. And this game is totally the nail that stands out gets hammered down. You cannot fight
Definitely, yeah.
you cannot fight the whole table. So if you're doing really well, everybody's going to start forming this coalition where they are like we're just going
right.
to take you out.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Um,
and you get stuff in agenda phase, like, if you have an election going on early and somebody has been screwed, it's like, oh, I'll just give it to him, and everyone's like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you get
yeah.
your little like catch up mechanic.
There's some balancing through that for sure. And again, I think that leads back to that decisive act idea of, you have to have some amount of subterfuge going on towards those end rounds of like, how am I going to get over the hump here? How am I going to get my final few points? Because people will try to stop you. I mean, that's just a certainty. And so you have to do something really really big to make to win. Usually, I mean,
And to follow up on that, the tech tree in this game is so much fun. And
yeah,
the crucial thing about the tech tree in this game is that it enables these big plays, these decisive acts, as you've been calling them, Blake. Stuff like light wave deflectors and grab drive and that kind of stuff, especially. But all sorts of things, maybe even just being able to use like the automatically blow up all the ground forces thing on like Mechatol if it's been
right,
heavily populated by ground troops to keep it. A lot of the techs are sort of like, oh, this is a cool tech, I'll pick it up. But then in late game, it's like, okay, what have I got? I need to like look at like the text that I have and maybe one that I can get this turn and construct some sort of crazy harebrained Rube Goldberg machine that's going to get me over the hump, as you said. And that optimization puzzle, as it were, where you have to account for the crazy nonsense that five other people are going to be doing to throw in your path, or what they're doing, which is just incidentally going to be doing stuff, is so much more interesting than any kind of randomization that any board game system could come up with, just from flipping tiles randomly. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like the puzzle being the rest of the table
right.
is fun. It's really
And
fun.
not even really like the other factions at the table. I mean, that's certainly an element to it, but so much of it is like, what the hell is Ben gonna do? You know,
Yeah,
because
it's
there's a pretty wide open decision space, and and not only that, but he's gonna have some hidden information. He might have some cards that are he might have his hidden objectives that are gonna score in some way that I couldn't predict. So
yeah.
even that though. Like I think the secret objectives. I mean, there are a couple duds. I won't lie, but a lot of the secret objectives in the game clue you in a little bit. It's like,
mm,
oh, why are you kind of sidling out to my home system? Do you have that like have a troop on an opponent's home planet objective, perhaps?
right,
Like you can sort of like deduce once you play the game enough times, you can kind of like deduce certain things. And obviously it's not like every time, but it will sort of give you hints if they're doing certain things that may seem illogical or like not in their best interest, unless they had that type of secret objective.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes there is the like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, you just tell them, hey, I have a reason to do this. Just, don't blow me up. Or
Yeah,
like,
why did you build 7 destroyers next to my fighter fleet? Is it perhaps because you need to destroy all those fighters in the anti-fighter barrage round? Like, it's like, yeah,
Hey, you
man,
haven't built a single destroyer all game. All of a sudden,
yeah, it's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, what can I say?
Right. Right.
It's like,
Right.
oh, I noticed you did that right after the like activating the secondary of Imperial and getting a new secret objective. Like,
Yeah.
so you can kind of, it's not perfect information or even close, but you can kind of piece things together sometimes.
Right.
yeah.
Oh man. Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. We talked a little bit at the beginning about this idea of people outside of board gaming kind of knowing about TI a little bit and like, oh, I've always wanted to play that. And I think so much of that has to do with the storytelling that comes out of this game. It really does lend itself to sort of painting a picture for everybody. It's very I mean, it'll really tickle your imagination, I think, if you play TI. But man, I feel like whenever we play this, I always just get so exhausted by the end. Like it's
It's
rare that by
tiring.
the end of the game
Yeah.
I'm still excited to be playing, you know?
That's
And
Yeah.
maybe
true.
that's just me, but
No, I
yeah,
mean,
by
No,
like hour 6 I'm kind of like, ah man, I've been building up towards this really cool stuff and I'm sort of excited for it, but
yeah.
I kind of want to go home,
Right.
That's sort of where I end up with TI.
There's some amount of part of the skill set required to play TI is how long you can cling to your sanity. You
Yeah.
can go into the beginning of the game with the best of intentions and the best laid plans, but hour 7 or 8 you is very different than hour 1 or 2. And you know, can you execute the plan that you had in mind? Maybe, maybe not. You know.
Right. I think I don't know if this is the last time I play. I think you guys have both played since this. I don't know if it was the last time I played or the time before that, but I remember going in and my only plan for the whole game was to bring out the jalapeno cheesy bean dip as part of a trade negotiation with one of our other buddies. Like that was the only plan I had, and I executed it on like hour 5 or something, and it was like okay, like I've done it, and that's sort of what I've resigned to myself to with Twilight Imperium. Like it's so much, I know that it's going to be so much of a mental load and I'm gonna be exhausted the next day and like not going to get like very much work done when I go into the office, that I'm like I need to minimize like the amount of thinking that I do, which I wish I didn't feel like I needed to do that, but I just know it's
Yeah.
going to drain me, this one,
I have a lot more free time than you, and so I do the opposite, which is I will increase my mental load thinking about the game the week before.
yeah,
I'll
Yeah, or
be
maybe the month before
Ben is the
sometimes.
expert of
right.
like planning out his TI game like a month in advance. As soon as he knows like what factions are in the draft, it's.
Yeah, I start researching all of them. I know what all of them do at this point. I know your faction better than you do. You
Oh
know.
yeah, Ben's always telling me what my faction does, and I don't do a bad job of it either. Like I'll get to the table and start reading and be like, oh yeah, like this is interesting. I'm excited to be able to do this, and that, But I don't know. For me, that genuinely the playtime is a real negative,
It
even
is. I
though
agree.
I think it's a
Mhm.
big reason why people get fascinated by this. And I won't lie, whenever we do play this game, I go into work the next day and people ask me, "What did you do over the weekend?" I played this 10-hour board game and it was like awesome,
Right.
and I'll play it up a little bit because it's kind of fun and it gets that visceral reaction. And I'm sure people I'm sure most people have a little bit of excitement around that when it comes to Twilight Imperium, and fair enough. But it is genuinely a negative for me, the playtime.
Yeah.
I
I was
agree.
like,
I agree.
there are worse ways to spend 8 hours or whatever it ends up being. I've played TI. I've had some. I played with one of our buddies, a guy we all know, and we did a 14.8 player game, and that was like
with
13
with no
hours
support for the throne,
with
right?
no support for the throne, and that was like 13 hours or whatever. Um, it was a long, long game, but it was also like my second win, which was pretty fun, you
So
know?
it made it all worth it for you.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I think it's man, it's honestly tough to talk about this game because there's just like so much stuff. You know,
Yeah,
it's like it's hard to even stay focused on it because like whenever I think about anything, it's like I think about like 50 stories about like this one time that something happened or like
right.
the
And
exceptions
and
to
I
the
think that's
rule.
the important thing with the game though is the
Yeah,
stories, you know?
yeah.
So fair
Yeah.
enough.
As we
I
said, it's that
I want to
giant
ask you
obelisk on the
guys
horizon.
I want to ask you guys as a point of discussion, and maybe you don't have anything to say about this, maybe you do. Um, but do you feel like the randomness in this game is problematic? I think we really talked about that with Eclipse. And to be fair, Twilight Imperium does have a good deal of randomness involved.
Absolutely. Well, first of
Again,
all,
yeah.
we already talked about the combat and the fact that even though technically they're both dice games, the fact that TI has a wide range of possible ranges you're hitting at rather than, certainly there's no like minus not modifier to your opponent's dice. Technically, anti-mass deflectors does provide a negative bonus to PDSs, but nobody wants to talk about PDSs anyway. But but for the most part, there's like no like you're not reducing your opponent's ability to hit you really. And I think that's a really important design decision, right? Like making it so people are hitting less just feels bad. Like
Yeah,
you like just put more plastic on the board and make more things hitting and like more things happening every round. Like this may sound a little bit like, beard pretzels Ameritrash, but like it's a real thing. It's like a visceral, you have to care a little bit about like how it feels to just be rolling for rounds on end and literally nothing happening versus rolling and things are happening. Stuff is blowing up, or I'm taking this planet.
yeah.
You know,
There's a big
it's,
difference between um, a combat in Twilight Imperium that takes 5 rounds that starts with 10 ships on each side and you're chucking 10 dice versus a 5 round combat in Eclipse where you start with 2 ships on each side, you're chucking 2 dice and it's lasting the same number of
and in
rounds, right?
5 rounds that you haven't hit each other yet. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe you still haven't hit each other.
but
Big difference, right? Because
well,
you're having that incremental, like blowing up a ship or two. I think it's really nice.
I think Ben brought up the big thing, which is that all the random stuff that happens in this game is public information, and so people will react to it and kind of self-correct for it,
Hmm.
because it's so easy to interact in this game and negotiate. So like, maybe randomly in exploration you get the crown of the enchilada, and it's like worth a victory point if you combine it with the tomb, and
Right,
now everybody wants it.
right.
The fact that you're the one who got it is cool. You can use it as a bargaining chip, but now it's kind of like the communal property of the table. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Now it's
Yeah,
something that can be fought over. It gets put on the planet. Now people want to go there and take it from you. Maybe it's a liability now because people would invade you when they wouldn't have otherwise. And so, like, stuff like that, where it's kind of like the upper end outlier of RNG, um, is interactable, and
hmm.
people can take it from you or that kind of thing. And so I don't think that like um, I don't think there's like, obviously in exploration and the Prophecy of Kings stuff, there's good stuff and bad stuff to find. Getting a nice attachment on a planet is a big deal, um, but I just don't think it matters that much. Like I don't know
Hmm.
how impactful it is on like the result of a game because like so many things happen in a game of TI, and even with the attachments, like once again you're making that planet a target. Oh, you got a
Yeah,
super sick attachment on that planet. Now I want to come take it.
Yeah.
You know,
I
sure.
so
I played a game with my girlfriend Bella, and she got two attachments on a planet, making it like a 6 resource planet. And somebody targeted it with the card that's like exhaust that planet, and then you get trade goods for it. And then somebody picked that up out of the tray, and next round it also got exhausted.
Right.
And then
So
there
you
was
can
like
kind
a
of play that
third time.
target. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like
there's some stuff.
some self
Yeah,
correction from the table when you have too good of RNG.
yeah,
And as we said, bad RNG, typically people feel sorry for you, or they recognize that if we have to give somebody something in agenda phase, the lowest opportunity cost means giving it to that person.
Yeah.
And because they may not be in the running, but now that you gave them that, maybe now they're back in it, and
Okay. I think those are fair points.
there is a
I
lot
would
of randomness.
argue I would argue that firstly there are some points of randomness that aren't public information, such as your hidden objectives and your action cards, which can have a lot of variance.
You're totally right.
Um,
Yeah, those are the weaker. That's like the weaker randomness in the game for sure.
and then I would also argue that there's certainly sometimes where you'll have agendas come out that just really can screw someone, and
Gosh,
and I think there's a lot of randomness there. I mean, we had one game. What was this? It was something about
are you thinking about the
I
War
was
Sun game?
yeah, I was playing the War
Yeah.
Sun faction, and the agenda came out that said, well, either everybody gets War Suns but they don't have sustained damage, or I forget the other side of that.
I
Um,
forget. Yeah, it's
but
No, I think
the point being, everybody ends up having War Suns in that case, and it was like, oh man, my fun little thing that I get to do kind of went away. And I think I guess coming back to my main point, part of why I asked the question is that I believe most of the randomness in TI, even if it is very random and maybe a little bit unbalanced as a result, I think most of it is pretty fun. Whereas in Eclipse, it's not. But I think most of the randomness in TI is fun and lends itself to that storytelling and all of that. And fair point as well about a lot of it can be mitigated by the players. So,
I do agree about secret objectives and action cards. That might actually be like the weakest part of the game in general. Not that many factions have like amazing action card economy. One of the reasons I like Necrovirus is because they're drawing so many cards that I can sculpt the perfect hand of action cards regularly and have
mm,
it just on call for like when I need it. But most factions can't do that, and it feels kind of bad, especially if you spend a token to like draw some cards, or you invest in that technology that draws you an extra action card every turn, every round, and you're just getting bunk. And there aren't really many action. I removed the one action card that we all agreed was totally useless, the like reverse voting direction one. But there's no action card that's like actually useless. But there are definitely some that are better than others. And of course, when you're drawing these cards, you're hoping to get certain cards. The one that gives you bonus movement, morale boost, which gives you a bonus in combat, can be incredibly impactful with like fighters or in any big fleet, and stuff like that can really swing the course of a game. And some cards is like it's a nice little bonus, but maybe it's not a huge deal. um, yeah, I do agree, and there's not really much you can do about that. And I mean, technically Hakan being in the game means you can trade the action cards, but they're not going to be in every game, and maybe nobody wants that card anyway. And yeah, secret objectives can often in a table of 6 experienced players or more than 6. The game is decided by secret objectives. And if somebody has a mid round and end of round secret objective that they can easily score in the last round of the game, and they're saving those two, and they know 100% they can definitely get those two in the last round, then that's really, really powerful because they can be sort
yeah,
of operating at -2 according to everybody else. Like, oh, maybe he's not in the running. He probably can't score both of those right now, but really they can. And as a result, maybe they leap through in the very end and manage to score both and win. That's also basically random. And in order
right.
for you to be getting better secret objectives, you have to be spending resources that would otherwise be spent on something else. And so there's a real opportunity cost to be digging and using the secondary of Imperial to try and find that. And that doesn't feel great. I never feel good about having to do that. And I do it sometimes because you gotta, but it doesn't feel good ever to do that. I
Yeah. I think the ideal scenario would be, well, I get my 3 secret objectives, maybe I get a fourth one and replace one of them that I have, but I let that sort of be part of my game plan and let that sort of guide me towards one action or another, rather than, okay, well, I'm going to search out these like great secret objectives that are
Mhm.
going to allow me to sneak up from behind, because one of them can be triggered during the action phase, and then I'll trigger one during the agenda phase, and they're both going to be really easy for the rest of my plan. Like, no, I think for the most part, you don't spend the extra actions on it, and you let them sort of guide your plan. And every once in a while, you get, you know, lucky with them and get some that are more advantageous than others.
Yeah. There are some games of TI where you really hope the pizza is good. And those are the ones where you are not doing too well in general, and you're not really in contention, because there are some games where you're. I had one game recently where it was my home system got taken out because of this Hakan negotiation. Bella stabbed me in my back in the back. She was playing Hakan, my own girlfriend. She traded in the silence of space to my neighbor so that he could come in and invade my home system. And it was I knew at that moment, it was like hour two. I'm not gonna recover from this.
Hmm.
My space stock is gone at my home system. It's going to be a while getting him out of there, even if he's nice to me, which he was, and voluntarily moved out. It was like, this is going to just be this is not happening.
Yeah,
And you can have a really bad TI experience. I think you could get
Definitely.
knocked out really early and just be not in contention the whole game, and no amount of pity thrown your way is gonna change it too much.
right.
Sometimes
And
the
it's not the type of game you can stand up and walk away from. I mean, you're going to
right,
ruin the experience for everybody else, you know. Not that there are mini games where you could do that anyways. I'm not suggesting that, but I think it would be especially rude to, you know, after people have set aside a whole day. Yeah,
yeah,
you could be, you know, held prisoner for 6 hours because of that. Yeah.
yeah,
But hopefully there's still something to be gained there, right? Because it's fun to watch the game even while you're playing it. You know, I mean, there's a story going on, and it's fun to see what
right.
other people are up
You
to, and
can
it's fun to
still
do the negotiations.
you can still influence the outcome. You can kind of do some king making, or like there's some real, and like this is controversial, but in the community itself, some people don't like the support for the thrones. The idea that you could have just like a whole table throw like all of their support for the thrones at one person and just decide that they win. And I've heard arguments back and forth on that of like, well, if you're such a dick the entire time that like the other four players literally throw their support behind one guy, then maybe you're not playing the politics of the game well. And that the support for the thrones is very contentious as to whether of like how they're used. So many people house rule them. I've played many games where we don't even have them. I misuse them all the time. I'm terrible at handing my
Yeah,
supports
don't
out to
don't
the
listen to
wrong
Ben when he
person.
talks about support for the throne. He'll throw a game on a dime.
He's crowned many a king, that Ben.
On a complete accident. I thought I could. I thought I just had it. I don't
Oh
know.
man, gosh, his last year's birthday TI game was thrown. I think it was like you gave somebody support for the throne early on, and I was like, well, they're gonna win now, and then they won. But sometimes that's how it is. But yeah, I personally prefer to leave support for the throne out of the game. But I put it in sometimes. I think it's sometimes you have to, let your ducklings swim in the pond on their own so that they can swim into the whirlpool and be sucked into the abyss, and they learn not to do it again. That's basically that's my first support for the throne. I have to let people play with it so that I can like take it away again and be like, do you want to have that happen again?
Yeah, yeah. I would rather play a 10-point game with no support than like an 11-point game with support, or a 12-point game with, usually
I
it's
agree.
10, 12,
Yeah.
14, but that's just me.
Anyway, I think we're getting on. We should
Yeah, I think we
probably.
need
Yeah, I
to
think so.
rate
I
this.
think we gotta rein this in.
Shall I
Um,
give my rating? I'm happy to.
yeah, but feel free.
I
I've
give
got mine locked in.
You locked in there,
I
Ben?
locked in this time.
I've locked in, and yeah, I'm
We're all
locked
locked in.
I give Twilight Imperium a 7. I think it's fun. I think it's long. And sometimes I'm going to play it, you know? It's not one that I think I would go through the effort of organizing a game for, because it is quite an undertaking.
It
But
is, yeah.
if someone else is organizing a game, then usually I'm down.
Yeah, I'll go in. I'm the board game leech. I never organize a game, so I'm always just benefiting from other people's generosity with putting this on the table. I give TI a 8.3. I've only ever played it with the expansion Prophecy of Kings, so I couldn't tell you what the base game experience is like. But what I've played, I liked pretty well. It's there's nothing else really like it. Um, and I give it an 8.3 because I do not subscribe to these two's philosophy that it must be in increments of zero point 0.5.
Are you of
And
that
that's what
same opinion, Will? Are you a point
No,
fiver?
I gave Forbidden Stars a 9.8.
I'm.
I'm a
Okay.
firm point fiver.
Yeah.
I think I feel like I almost always disagree with the BGG aggregate ranking ratings, but I kind of feel like they're about on the nose with this one. They gave it an 8.6. I think I give this like an 8.6. I think that sounds about right to me. For me personally, I do have a lot of history with this game, like I mentioned. I think that I can't give it above like an 8 point. I can't give it a 9, and the reason is because Dune exists, and I think Dune is like you said that there's no other game like this, Ben, and the game that is like this is Dune. um, Dune is a lot like TI, but it's half the game time. So
And
um,
we've been trying to play it. It doesn't have.
I've been trying to get these two nerds into a game of Dune, but we can rustle up 6 for TI, but we can't rustle up 6 for Dune.
It doesn't have that monolithic quality, you
Yeah,
know.
Right.
the original Dune 1979 I think is still the best of this sort of like long form, heavy negotiation game. Um, and as Blake said, I think the length of the game is a real con, and so is the randomness. I can't give it above like an 8.5, 8.6. I'm just in that range. I think I love this game. I genuinely do, but it does have a lot of downsides. You have to plan for it like you're going on a camping trip, and
Yeah.
you have to pack your supplies and make sure the bears don't show up to steal your TI game pieces and stuff.
But
And I think oh yeah, go ahead.
crucially, the juice I think is worth the squeeze.
The
You
juice is
know.
worth the squeeze on this one. I think the more you play this game, the more interesting it is because of like you understand what you're negotiating about. Like in your
Mm.
Yeah.
first play, you may not understand why everyone's freaking out when you give somebody support for the throne, but you'll learn, and then next time you'll understand how incredible a bargaining chip it is. Um, I think that this game, yeah, I think that's I'm sitting about right that I'm looking forward to the day that you guys can play Dune and we can talk about it comparing to this game, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on the podcast when we inevitably get the people to do it. But I do think that Dune, the OG Dune, is like it's a really great design, and
Yeah.
the agenda phase, as it were, is not as time consuming. There's not really an agenda phase in OG Dune, but there's plenty of other negotiation. You don't get as wacky stuff as like changing the rules of the game, like you mentioned in Dune, but you do get a sort of the games of the rules of the game are like already broken by like fundamental mechanics of the game being controlled by various players, like
Mm.
moving is controlled by a player and buying action cards is controlled by a player, and it's already inherently even more asymmetrical than TI4 is, which is already quite asymmetrical by most standards. And I will say that it does share the downside of TI4, and that is you can get blown out early in Dune and never recover, and you're going to be there for a while. But the interesting thing that's different about Dune, and the reason I kind of bring it up was sort of leading up to this point, is that one of the really cool things about Dune that TI4 doesn't have at all is that um, during the storm phase of Dune, there's something called a like a worm nexus or something. I forget exactly what it's called. Um, but when that happens, you get to choose allies,
Hmm.
and your allies are permanent until the next like worm nexus occurs, and that might be next turn. It might be never. And whereas you do have these sort of temporary alliances in TI4, Dune kind of takes it this interesting step further where, like, when you have ally, it goes so far as to create allied win conditions.
Hmm.
So, like, if you have a special win condition for your faction and I'm allied with you, we share that victory. Like, we won as a team of two people. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah,
And
I
I
wish
think,
more games allowed for win conditions like that. Like for example, I really like that in Cosmic Encounter that you can have multiple people
yeah,
win.
I think that's really cool, and I think that, like, it's way better than like the Ankh merge, where it's just like
Yeah.
you're now
Oh,
one
yeah.
person, because in even my point, the point is like if you're out of the game in TI4, you're just out of the game. I mean, like you might be able to do some king making, but in Dune, like you could be really behind, but like every faction has a valuable thing to offer in an alliance, and so maybe you're allying. Nobody wants to ally with the guy who's like people want to ally with the guy who's winning, but then maybe the second place person, you can offer them something valuable, and that allows them to like win, because now they have access to your special faction stuff, and that lets them do some sick plays. I think there's like an interesting angle there, and TI does kind of like skirt around the edges of that, where like you get to use your allied what's the card? It's not like the hero, but the commander. Your like allied commander ability. It's
Mm.
like it's a little bit similar, but you don't have an allied victory in TI, and I think that's like a really fun board game mechanic. You don't see that in many games.
Yeah.
Anyway, all this to say that I don't think I can go above that score for TI because I still think Dune is just a better design. It's amazing that it's from 1979 because it's aged so well. Still a great game.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like I should add, because obviously I've rated it quite a bit lower than you guys. There aren't many games that I would give a 7 to, but then in the same breath say I think everybody should play Twilight Imperium at least once. I think that it's a game worth trying out. It's very very interesting, and it's something that, I feel like if you win and you played Twilight Imperium once, if you haven't already, that it's something that you'll remember for a really long time. That it'll probably be a pretty special experience.
Yeah.
Definitely. If somebody invites you to TI for their birthday party, accept the invitation.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it.
It'll be something you talk about. No matter what happens, it'll be something you talk about with your friends for a while, and that's what friends are for, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right. Well, I think we talked about pretty much everything we want to talk about, unless you guys got something.
No, we'll see how this goes. I know we had a couple recording errors, so we'll see what Frankenstein's monster you put
Yeah,
together.
yeah. Now it's up to me to fix everything as usual. I'm just kidding.
I believe in you, Will. You've got this.
You've got it, Will.
All right. Well, like and subscribe, or don't. It's fine. Just enjoy the show. See
Yeah.
you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.